Welcome to another episode, all. Throughout this episode, I'm going to be discussing a little debate which is going on the internet concerning the term Asperger syndrome, high functioning autism, low functioning autism, and how do we refer to people who are autistic, whether it's classical autism, Asperger syndrome, etc. So I'm just going to deal with the term Asperger syndrome and why some people may still refer to themselves as that way. And is it used in the medical field still? We're going to ask. Asperger syndrome is still used in the medical system today. It's not used as a diagnosis. Today people don't get diagnosed with Asperger syndrome, but they may still find it on medical records and so on. Such if you just allow me to show you one of mine. As you should be able to see, that's from the 5th of February 2024. That's one of my records. Now, if I just zoom in for you. And if you look at the date there, in February this year, and if I zoom down, you find diagnosis, Asperger syndrome. So my medical records still this day do show Asperger syndrome on them. And if you just allow me to read through a few records in my folder. Right. In 2016, Vanessa quote, "This gentleman is a patient of mine in the epilepsy clinic. He has recently been seen at the Helmshire Hospital by a professor regarding his epilepsy. He was on the epilepsy surgery program and unfortunately this is not appropriate for him at this time. Daniel has frequent epileptic seizures. He also has quite a lot of subclinical activity, which means that his cognition is severely affected. He also has Asperger syndrome, which makes it quite difficult for him to recognise social situations. His epilepsy and short-term memory loss affect him greatly." End of quote. So my nurse used that in 2016. So they are still using it. I've just go a few pages further ahead. Yeah, in quite a few pages in there, the guy using the term Asperger syndrome, but my nurse is still referred to me by my diagnosis. But if someone's not diagnosed with Asperger syndrome, a nurse is unlikely going to write that they've got Asperger syndrome. Today, they're most likely to be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Asperger syndrome in autism research is an outdated term because autism researchers can find no distinction between things like Connors syndrome, child disintegrative disorder, autistic disorder, classical autism. They can't find any difference between them. No distinct difference that made them bring it under the umbrella autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed in the late 90s time and so on, and at that point in time, but Asperger syndrome was still in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders and wasn't removed from the DSM-5 until 2013 when the DSM-5 came out. Today in the DSM-5-TR, the revision of it, it's now just autism spectrum disorder. And another reason someone might refer to themselves with Asperger's is it's an easier way to refer to themselves as ASD1, Autism Spectrum Disorder Level 1. So some do that to make it sound a bit more, to explain their autism a bit more. So that's why some people might refer to themselves as people with Asperger syndrome or as Asperger's. But you'll find out most people who are diagnosed with Asperger syndrome just refer to themselves as autistic because they banished the term Asper because eventually they came to find out that Hans Asperger, who it's named after, was a participant in the Nazi Holocaust complicitly, and he was a believer in racial hygiene. So all that was going on in Germany during the Nazi Holocaust, then seeing the Polish as genetically inferior, the eugenics movement and so on. Hans Asperger was an active participant of it, and autistic individuals simply don't want to be associated with him because of the controversy around all the things he did, which we found out. But high functioning autism, there's no such thing as that in autism research. Low functioning autism, there's no such thing in autism research. Just according to autism research now, everyone will be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. You may find some people say they've got Asperger's. It can depend which location they're in. Like in North America, they use the DSM manual, psychiatrists do, but in the United Kingdom, they use the International Classification for Diseases, 11th edition. That's a ICD 11. So the two different manuals, which could also explain a bit, partially, the different diagnosis rates between different countries. So if you're using different manuals to one another, but they're likely to get a different rate of diagnosis. And the Asperger's wasn't removed from the ICD 11 until 2019, and the Asperger syndrome was removed from the DSM in 2013. So you may have found people here in the UK that more of us were diagnosed with Asperger syndrome. So nurses and so on may still use he's got a diagnosis of Asperger syndrome, but they won't actually diagnose people with Asperger syndrome anymore. So anyone diagnosed from now, so I'd say in a few decades' time, no one will be referring to themselves as someone with Asperger syndrome. In the future, it's just going to be autism spectrum disorder or autism spectrum condition, as some manuals, psychiatrists do go by ASC, autism spectrum condition. Not all of them call it a disorder anymore. So I hope this has cleaned up why some people call themselves Asperger's, even though it is an outdated term in autism research. It can depend on your location, the time you were diagnosed. It could depend which manual you were diagnosed by. There's just so many factors that play towards that may make someone want to describe themselves as someone with Asperger syndrome. Such as when we say Asperger syndrome, that can make it clearer to another individual that we don't have the same academic difficulties as other individuals on the autism spectrum. It could make it we don't have as much problem speaking. Those of us with Asperger syndrome, those of us diagnosed with that. Yeah, so some people just use Asperger's as a way to say ASD1. Some people just say mild autism to refer to ASD2. And some people say severe autism to refer to ASD3. But as I did on a separate episode, there's no such thing as severity levels in autism. They're just support need levels. After all, it's developmental, so the autism persistently changes. It doesn't stay the same. So altogether, we're going to find in a few decades' time, no one will refer to themselves as Asperger's. It'll just be everyone getting diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, as they are today, because in both psychiatrist manuals, both of them only go by autism spectrum disorder or autism spectrum condition now. So I hope this has cleaned up some of the debate by sharing some of the history about Hans Asperger, when Asperger was put in the DSM, the ICD, when it was removed, that it can have to do with location, just how someone wants to identify themselves, his association with the Nazi Holocaust, and so on. So I hope this has settled the debate for you. If you enjoyed this, please hit like, hit subscribe, and it will really be appreciated. Thank you.